called intoxicating the public auction, and again, it's fiction, right? Never happened, right? Remember, all fiction is based on fact. Okay, faction, friction. Good. So this is called intoxicating the public auction. So, writing about something that's wrong is surely just a matter of writing about personal taste, right? I mean, some things are very obviously wrong. Pedophilia, murder, rape. In Belfast, the sight of teenage mothers walking in unison to the shops in their pajamas in the middle of the day. Personally, there's little I've done wrong that I can't persuade myself is actually right, if I try hard enough. Under the right circumstances, we can convince ourselves of anything we wish, and we go to great lengths to justify actions that are clearly wrong. Raskolnikov's majestic effort to persuade us of his legitimate reasons for killing the old woman, and Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment are testament of that. Quote, why am I going there now? Am I capable of that? Is that serious? It is not serious at all. It's simply fantasy to amuse myself, a plaything. Quote, once, I was young, bored, and working in a downtown office of Toronto's financial sector. My official job title was return mail technician at a telecoms company. In those days, hard drive archiving was in its infancy, and my job was to sort returned mail, but also to locate the customers with correct addresses, send in their bill, and store the new details in the database that was being built. I had a desk and spent a lot of time in another room upstairs retrieving details off the gelatin-like sheets of my purple microfiche. Looking out the window, St. Andrew's flag fluttered away in the wind above a little church, a constant reminder of my exile from Scotland to Canada. The only visitor to the room other than myself was an old, red-faced ginger guy called George. He would come in each day to peer at the window and check that the food vans were there on the avenue alongside the gulls, greedily awaiting the lunchtime hordes. "Oh yeah," he'd say, "sausage and chunky fries," before scooting off to my relief. The diet of hydrogenated fats hadn't exactly done wonders for George's body odor. My boss, Colin, was a genuinely nice fellow. He ran a team that included myself and several others. Cornell, a friendly Jamaican guy, sat in front of me. Maria, a 40-something blonde, was behind me. Liliana from Belize, along with Colin, made up those numbers in my immediate vicinity. Alongside us, but separated by cabinets, were the other members of the team. We were all besotted with paperwork doing back-office duties for the company. Every Friday, one member of the group would be on duty rotation to bring in a food of their choice to share with the others. Cornell was an excellent cook and often brought in his famous homemade spring rolls, whether it was his turn or not. The passport to progression through the company's great corridors was an MBA, and I was growing increasingly worried, pushing my rickety microfiche trolley through them. A friend tipped me off about a job in a local film company. With my previous experience as a projectionist, I made a successful application, much to my relief. I gave Colin my 2-week notice, and mustered an, well, at least you're moving to your own field. The corporate script was in use in all its weighted diligence. They were scrambling to get a new body for me to train. To be fair, I hadn't a clue what I'd been doing, and was even convinced I'd accidentally erased half the batch of records that were on the database one Muddlesome morning. Fittingly, it turned out that my departure day would also be my first and only day in the food rotation. To pass the time, I'd been reading a book called Taz by Hakeem Bey, in which he discussed a theory called poetic terrorism. Quote, an exquisite seduction carried out not only in the cause of mutual satisfaction, but also as a conscious act may be the ultimate poetic terrorism. The poetic terrorist behaves like a confidence trickster whose aim is change. The poetic terrorist for people who will not realize, or at least for a few moments, that what you have done is art. Don't stick around or argue. Don't be sentimental. Be ruthless. Take risks. Be legendary. The best PT, poetic terrorism, is against the law. But don't get caught. Art is crime. Crime is art. In light of my boredom with the world in which I was working, I could not shake these theories from my head and was fascinated by them. That my final day of work would fall on my first and only turn in food rotation no longer seemed a stroke of misfortune. It was rather rapidly becoming an obsession with the opportunity to initiate change. Running tasks for the office each day, I had become aware of a curious balding man sequestered near the filing cupboard, all of his own. He was always gazing at his fingernails, picking at them and flicking all manner of flaky debris or wrist keyboard. If there was such a thing as corporate destitute, this guy had found it. He had all the trappings, the framed photo of his wife and newborn on his desk, the gray trench coat, the dapper brown briefcase. Joining further dots might lead to the suburbs, a dog, a green lawn, and weekly get-togethers with a few old friends to watch American football. It was a reality conditioned by no change. I was on the verge of escaping the very fate that he was trapped in. Soon, a cute new intern started, and she sat nervously alongside me as I showed her the daily tasks that she would be inheriting from me. I struggled not to ridicule them as I did so. I didn't mention the accidental erasure of records. She'd find out soon enough, and I would be gone. In the days that followed, she got the hang of things, and I even introduced her to George, who would disturb him unwittingly in a microfiche, peering out the window and talking to himself one day. It was a short visit, though. The room smelled of pickled eggs. When the Friday finally arrived, I came in with my Tupperware of food, and the team came together. Marianne, a statuesque Kenyan, was the first to declare her hunger, and there was a general excitement in the air. I opened my container and produced my brownies. They're, homemade, I told them. And extra chocolatey, said Miriam, taking a bite. Stu, these are wonderful. I'll have to get that recipe from you. The others began to congregate. One at a time now, I joked. I left a plate on the table for those running late, and they all disappeared for a meeting while I ate my brownie. It seemed only fair. The cute intern had also taken one. I timed things reasonably well. It was almost an hour later that they all returned. Cornell looked sleeper than usual as he moved slowly back to his desk. The intern's once timid approach had mellowed, but her increasingly glassy-eyed appearance had steadily evolved into spasms of laughter and tearful hysterics. Everything I tried to explain to her was suddenly a joke. In the increasingly comedic air, I noticed that Colin had been sitting at his desk in front of his blank monitor for some time. Maria, behind me, piped in. Nice brownies, Stu. Got any more? No problem, I replied. She winked at me knowingly. Soon, following a particularly violent laughing fit, the intern excused herself to the bathroom. Quickly behind her, the tall figure of the Kenyan, Mariam, made a beeline in the same direction, and in the final few steps down the hallway towards the ladies. I felt pretty out of it myself, knew that some of the others had unwittingly scoffed the seconds. Colin had disappeared and returned with a computer technician who inspected the station and watched as the monitor sprang into life. You didn't turn it on, Colin, said the technician as he walked away, looking quizzically at him. The intern returned and remained straight-faced for 5 minutes before bursting into unstoppable giggling once again. She was in tears and kept apologizing. Maria invited me for lunch. We had a game of pool and a beer. I actually prefer the light stuff usually, Stu, she told me. I laughed, wondering how the hell someone who seemed so goddamn normal could be turning into such a party animal. As we walked back to the office, I wondered if there was anything else she might be keeping under wraps. When we returned, I realized I'd forgotten about the colleagues upstairs, with the last 2 brownies on the paper plate. I thought about getting one to George, but decided the poor guy probably had enough issues without needing my help. I headed up to where the board guy was. He wasn't anywhere to be seen. His jacket and briefcase were there, so I knew he hadn't gone home. I left the paper plate on his desk and returned downstairs. As the day's end neared, my colleagues began to gather at the table. Cornell stood there dazed, his bloodshot eyes almost shut. Maria sat there happily munching a large bag of popcorn. The others all stood about, looking weary. Colin led the sudden off. Well, Stu, we wish you well, he mustered. He looked drained. Cornell attempted a complicated handshake that had difficulty grasping. I don't know what it is about today, man, he said. It's been, different. And, it's felt good. Maria laughed quietly between bites of popcorn. Mariam had to go home, continued Colin. But, she said to say goodbye, and good luck, as do we all, Stu. I looked at them. None of them seemed aware of what had occurred except Maria. They were all harmless, and for a moment I began to question what I had done. I thought of the guy upstairs and how he wasn't really guilty of anything except perhaps being a little dull and unadventurous. I hoped that on his train journey home he might find himself a little more drawn in by the visuals of the passing landscape than usual. I thought of how perhaps, after eventually peeling his face off the train window, he'd find that he'd already missed a stop. He'd have to explain that to his wife. But if perhaps for just 1 hour that train ride provided a deeper and more pleasant escape than he might have previously known, then perhaps for one day, his public auction would be something sweeter than he'd ever experienced. And he'd consider things he never thought before possible, like change. As my soon-to-be former colleagues began to disperse, the cute little intern was getting the desk ready for a return on Monday. She looked at me as I packed the empty Tupperware into my bag. "You want to go for a beer?" she asked. I thought about taking her out and see what might happen and how that might be a delectable sprinkle of sugar on top of my departure. But I politely declined. I hadn't encouraged her. "Now, Stu," said Maria, who had evidently been listening in, "if you think you're just going to slink away after all that, then you have another thing coming." She grabbed my arm. "We're all going for a beer and we'll see what happens." There was a twinkle in her eye. The wonderfully delicious thing about doing something wrong is that it feels so right. Hergé of Tintin fame, character Captain Haddock. His character had legendary battles with the bottle, often illustrated by a duel between the devil and the angel aspects of his conscience, arguing over the pros and cons of drinking. More often than not, the angel was left weeping while the devil laughed victoriously. The point of my story is this: however much a conscience flirts with the idea of what constitutes good or bad, ultimately we often do what makes us feel good, whether that's right or wrong. This basic human instinct is one that takes some effort to ignore. Some are afraid to explore and ignore their inner voice or are weary of the repercussions. Surely, whatever role it is our conscience may play, in the midst of the public auction, rightly or wrongly, we're all hedonists